Okay, hello everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic B-side so far. Without too much further ado, let's get into our talk, where we will be talking about unlocking Bluetooth padlocks with what is essentially a polite request, as you will soon see. A little bit in terms of introductions as soon as my PowerPoint begins to work. There we go. So that was all the production value of the presentation, by the way. Don't expect more of that. So about myself, my name is Miłosz. In my past life, I did a fair bit of computer science and cybersecurity teaching. Nowadays, I am the mobile security lead at WithSecure, where I mostly look at the security of Android and iOS apps, Android devices. I'm just going to continue going. Maybe try this very quickly. Ooh, did that flicker?
No luck.
Nope, no luck. Let's try quick out and in. Thinking about it. Okay, we're into troubleshooting territory.
We've
got something.
Quick, tab back in.
So then if I tab into, it's on the wrong screen. Give me 2 seconds. From current slide. Yes, hey. Okay, we can keep going. Without further ado, my name is Miłosz, past life, university teaching, blah, 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 currently mobile security lead at WithSecure. I enjoy obscure power metal in the color purple. If you want to talk to me, you'll probably find me on Twitter. Moving on to Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex. I used to be a student. I am thankfully not anymore. I love locks and I like rats. And this is my first ever B-sides as attendee or speaker.
Woo! So Alex is also one of our interns at WithSecure from this year, and the talk that we'll be doing today is mostly about a project that we've done together. So why are we here? Kind of less in a philosophical stand and more, why are you actually in this room right now? The reason we're here today is, as I mentioned, to talk about something that started as an intern project. It is a bit of a cross-section of physical and mobile application security, which is kind of the combination of our interests. In terms of original goals, it started off being a project whose goal was to learn a little bit more about Bluetooth Low Energy, how you actually connect to the bloody thing, what does it do. But also to build a little bit of experience in mobile application reverse engineering, interacting with them, and kind of how to grok a mobile app that you've just downloaded from the internet. Long story short, we've got some interesting findings. We'll be showing those to you today and hopefully entertaining you with those. Our goals for today will be to probably have a little bit of banter, entertain you, go over the technical understanding and the fun findings, and finally talk about the process so you could potentially do similar things in the near future. Our key question, are to figure out whether a malicious device could listen in and replicate the signal that actually unlocks a smart padlock. Let's just do this again quickly. It's thinking about it.
Ooh.
I think we're about to be back.
Ooh. Something's happening.
Yeah, it's very much thinking about it. No, it is blank. Try again.
Going well.
Come on. It's not liking it.
Oh.
Try another port. That'll work. Okay, bear with me. I'm going to nuke the resolution down to like 720p.
Oh, we had it for a second.
Yeah.
Oh, it is back.
Oh, do I keep going? I'm gonna keep going for now. If it doesn't work, then I'll nuke the resolution.
Yeah.
Bring back the slideshow. It means I get to do my pun again. Our key questions are to find out whether a malicious user or device could listen in on and replicate the unlock signal of a lock. Whether they could potentially tamper with the lock in any other way. So can they communicate with the lock and tell it to do something that it isn't supposed to do? And crucially, how much information an attacker might need to perform this attack. Yeah, let's go 720p. Okay.
Oh.
That was before I did anything as well.
Very exciting.
Oh, it does not like 720p. It's okay, we'll keep going. We'll figure it out.
Oh, it's got worse.
It has got worse.
Is that 4:3?
Yeah, because it's now told me that its default resolution is 1024 by 768.
My God.
It is really not liking what's currently going on here.
Windows always work.
It's not a Windows issue, I can assure you of that.
This would have been 100 times worse if this was Linux.
Okay, this one it doesn't like at all. That one. Do right now.
I believe in you. You've
It's
got
okay,
this.
we can do this. We can do this.
We can do this.
Yay! Woo! No!
You know, that's exactly the thing that's happened right now.
Oh?
Well, I don't know what this is. This isn't even any screen.
No, that is my screen. It's just also thinking about it very hard.
But the star bar's messed up.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, God.
But okay, we've got a little bit of cutoff, but that should be much more stable on a much lower resolution. I'll skip this slide, you've heard it already. So, the logs themselves, they are from a Chinese company known as Ealing Smart. They are known under a bunch of other brands as well, so we've seen them under Adweller, we've seen them under EC Smart, and a bunch of other random kind of variations of those, and names that don't really mean anything. The rationale for the specific choice of these locks was that they are very prominent on Amazon. If you go on Amazon UK and start looking for Bluetooth smart padlocks specifically, they kind of dominate the results, especially on early pages. And that kind of suggests a marketing budget. You don't get on top pages on Amazon organically. It is a very heavily marketized business of optimizing those appearances. They've done a lot of advertising on German television as well, so they're clearly trying something there. And they are seemingly popular in Poland as well, and a few other marketplaces. Like if we went onto other auction sites, you would also find that, yeah, basically they seem to be quite popular. Functionality-wise, some of them are keyed, and the key functionality itself is but it isn't immediately shocking. All of them have local fingerprint authentication, so I'll show the locks in a moment. They all have a little pad that you can touch with your finger, and then they either unlock or not unlock, depending on whether they like what your finger looks like. And finally, most of them have a remote functionality where they unlock over Bluetooth Low Energy. So you have a mobile application, you open that up, and you go, hey, I would like for this lock to unlock. It does some magic in the background. At this stage, we don't know what it is. And then eventually the lock decides to pop open. So here's what they actually look like. The red and blue ones, so those two over there, don't actually have Bluetooth functionality. They are fingerprint unlock only, so we won't be showcasing those here today. But the other three that you can see in the picture, so the black ones and the circular one, all do have it. The one in the middle also has an actual keyway and is probably the kind of least worst of the locks out here. Now, on the back of these locks, or on little pieces of paper attached to them, there is a little bit of precaution written that I find very entertaining. It says, please register first. Experience mode. Anyone can unlock. Now, I know what they're actually trying to say. What they're trying to say is that if you haven't first paired the lock with a phone, or if you haven't set up fingerprints, then they will just unlock when you touch them. But I find the phrasing quite amusing, especially given what we'll be doing in a moment. So, let's talk about our actual tooling approach and process. And I'll start with a high-level methodology, then I'll hand over to Alex, who actually knows what the hell happened, because, yeah, I would be probably wasting
You were
time
just the
otherwise.
supervisor. You didn't even do anything.
Yeah, isn't it great being supervisor? So in terms of methodology, the kind of goals that we wanted to achieve, first things first, was to actually intercept and understand the Bluetooth Low Energy communications. So the idea was hook it up with Wireshark and an RF sniffer and kind of just get visibility of the traffic. We then also wanted to decompile and reverse engineer the application. That was done with kind of classic mobile security tools, free Ajax GUI, Android debug bridge. And finally, intercept HTTPS communications, which is probably the kind of least interesting part of this talk, but at the same time, it is where things have maybe happened. Handing over to Alex, who will understand the technical side of things.
Hello, hello. So, first of all, a quick primer on Bluetooth Low Energy. It has a lot of nuances, a lot of features, but the most important parts really are that it is short-range communication over radio with inputs and outputs designated by MAC addresses. You are able to view devices in the local area by their MAC address and then connect to them. Otherwise, it's just data in and it's data out, and that's all that's really necessary. So, to start things off, we reverse engineered the Bluetooth Low Energy side of things. To do that, we used this little widget, a Nordic Semiconductor NRF 52840 dongle, loaded up with their own Bluetooth sniffing software. This gets loaded straight into Wireshark, and from there we can monitor it. On the right here is a Wireshark screenshot showing the packet. However, in more detail, here are the packets again. This was the initial data that we saw. There are some patterns. First of all, each packet starts with this consistent, what was found to be length of the total rest of the packet, split between multiple messages, and all of the messages themselves were very random looking. Because they were so random and because they were always an exact multiple of 16 bytes long, this led to the assumption or conclusion that AES was being used, specifically a block cipher, which encrypts things bit by bit in chunks of 16 bytes. So, from here, we knew we needed to decrypt the communications if we wanted to further reverse engineer it. And for that, we would have to look inside the application itself. I love how it's getting cut off. That's really fantastic. So, to reverse engineer the application, we loaded it up into JADX, which is a decompilation tool. From there, we noticed everything was very heavily obfuscated. All of the functions and variables were single name variables. So we needed some kind of clue to start piecing things together. Thankfully, within the application, there was a custom logging library, which included a very consistent format of class name, method name, and some message, often including variable name. And these little log messages were littered all throughout the code. So an example here is this. Obfuscated, ugly, C.N.A.F.G, completely incomprehensible. However, there is this line towards the bottom, BLE protocol utils, and package unlock cloud PWD, probably password. So, using that and using other log messages through our other functions, we were able to start deobfuscating things. So all of these previously unnamed variables were given nice, friendly names for us, including an encrypt data function. Looking into here, we could see how things worked. So basically, take a message, encrypt it, always encrypt it using the same hard-coded key. Fantastic. So, because it's hard-coded, that means we can read all messages basically forever, because it's hard-coded on the application side and on the hardware side. So, quick sidetrack on encryption. Specifically, this is using symmetric key encryption, which means both sides are the same. So we can decrypt back packets to and from. So, after decrypting a packet, this is what we found. This was sort of the consistent sort of format of them. They always started with the total length of the rest of the packet, followed by a little command code, which would tell the lock what function to perform, whether it be unlock, add a new fingerprint, whatever. A login token, which is negotiated when it first connects to the lock. And in this case, because this is the unlock cloud password packet, it also includes an ASCII encoded password. The password here was always 6 digits of decimal. And so I'll take it back to Miłosz to explain what that was.
Yeah, so at this point we have a bit of an understanding of how the communication actually occurs. So you've got your login tokens. They appear to be random. We think that they were most likely used to prevent replay attacks. The idea being that if you used one of those sniffers to listen in on an unlock command, if you tried to send the exact same unlock command back, it wouldn't work because it wouldn't be exactly correct. It would be missing that one piece of randomness. That information, however, could be easily obtained. So what you would do is you would basically communicate with the lock, say, hey, give me your token for right this moment, and then you could construct that packet. But yeah, you couldn't just straight up repeat it. Then you provide a 6-digit passkey, and the lock pops open. That tends to be the kind of workflow on that side of things. So at this point, we do actually kind of have enough information to perform a replay attack, even though they tried to protect against it, because what we can do is we can observe the unlock command once, we can decrypt it because we found the encryption material, we can go back to the appearance of the actual packet and grab that last bit, which is the passkey, and then reconstruct our request with the new unlock token. We can always create valid unlock tokens. So at this point, we have a kind of sort of replay attack where we have to do a little bit of work, but not very much, provided that we know the passkey. So how do we find out the passkey? That's kind of the one thing that we're missing right now. We can find it out by listening to the locks, but that means that we need to be right there. And as you'll see when I try to run the demo, I will actually have to grab this laptop and put it down, because you have to be really bloody close. So that's, it's viable, but it's not viable. How do we find a passkey? It seems to never change. We've factory reset these locks, we've linked them up with multiple mobile devices. It keeps being the same. So if it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it will forever be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. However, the phone and the application somehow know what that code is for each lock. So how does it get it? At the time, we only had one lock, so one potential hypothesis was, oh, is it hard-coded? Hopefully not, but we've already seen some interesting stuff, so maybe. Could it be generated from the lock details somehow? That seems quite likely, but we weren't able to identify a pattern, so we're going with, as far as we know, no, maybe they are. Or does it come from the web? And that last option seems very likely because the initial setup process requires you to be online. If this was some form of derivation, considering how lazy they have been with the application otherwise, that would have happened on client side. There would be no need for client-server communication. So, flying with the hypothesis that it actually does come from the web, from the API, we start looking at web traffic. And sure enough, after a little bit of looking through Burp Suite, so essentially it's kind of very similar to what you would do with any web application security stuff. So anybody who's played with Burp Suite before, you've pretty much seen it all. The only thing that is slightly different here is there's a few steps to set up your phone to pipe through Burp Suite, but that is relatively easy, quite quick setup, and I'm not going to bore you with that part because that's a Google search, really. Looking through the actual information, we eventually find a passkey request. So there was a post request to the API saying get lock info by Mac, and it took a few parameters. So it took the MAC address of the lock, which is a public piece of information. Every time the lock actually kind of advertises that it's available to be connected, it broadcasts its MAC address. So that is information you definitely super duper know. There is the username of the user who is actually performing the unlock, some sort of session token, that's already pretty good, and then a couple of parameters that honestly we don't understand and don't care about. We don't know what type equals 2 means, and CP equals EL I think has something to do with branding, but again, gonna kind of dismiss those as unimportant. The response to that looks like this. We very helpfully get informed twice that the request was successful, once by a state and once by a message in Mandarin Chinese. It then reminds us of the MAC address and tells us what the actual passcode to unlock the lock is. In this case, 496250. So now we understand the full operation of the actual mobile application. So there is a little bit of API communications going on first. The mobile application goes to the API and says, hey, can I please have the unlock code for this specific lock? Here is all my information. That comes back with a number. We take it. We then talk to the actual lock and we go, hey, can I have your temporary token, which I need to construct the packet? That requires no authorization or anything. That is intentional. It just comes back and says, hey, here's my random number. You then construct the request. You've seen the packet before. You just plop that data in, and the lock processes all that, and if it's happy, it will pop open. Right, so you know this request. Yeah, I've told you that it requires a MAC address, a username, a login token, blah, 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 blah. What of this information does it actually require? Hopefully we can test that through the magic of just replacing things with random gibberish. You'll be pleased to know that that responded just fine, so it came back and said, hello, here's my passcode. Okay, cool, so does it matter if those are even present? No, it doesn't. And just a quick reminder, this is public information. So the MAC address, again, I realize this is kind of clipped, but I think you can infer most of it. So basically, it's MAC equals that, right? That is public information that you can get from the lock itself. Which means now we can put something together. Mm-hmm. And I'll hand over to Alex, who put something together.
So, taking this all together and building a single proof of concept, what we do is we scan for nearby BLE devices, filter out the ones with the E-Link OUI or whatever it is, grab the passkey from the API, completely for free. We don't need to do any work there at all. Connect to the lock itself, grab the token, send the password, and ta-da, it opens. And now we are going to very bravely attempt a demo.
Woo. So, as I mentioned, I'm going to have to take this laptop and put it down. You know how we've had some interesting visual issues before? Yeah, fingers crossed. So I'm going to try this.
Oh.
We're okay for now. Step 2. Thank you. Step 2 is to bring in my other screen onto there, which is another chance for it to all explode. We'll see. No, we're on. Perfect. So, I'm going to do a couple of things here. I'm going to start by switching these on, so I will just touch each lock once. I am accidentally using the right fingerprint, so I'm going to stop doing that. So, I've touched at least 2 of them with the wrong fingerprint, I promise you, and the other 2 didn't realize that I did it anyway. They're all locked. And now all I'm going to do is I am going to run this script. And what that will do is hopefully detect these. I need to be very close, so it should detect 4 of them in a moment. Yep, we've got 4. And then for each of them, it's going to go, talk to the API, grab the admin passcode, and in a moment, yeah, we've had one of them unlocked, this one. Whoop. And this one's gone. Whoop. And I've heard one, I think it was this one, yep. And the black one, it sometimes needs to think about it. No, there we go.
Hey.
They're all open. Right, now do I present from the ground or do I try this again? I'm going to try this again.
Oh.
I think we're okay. Okay, that was the most technical part of this talk. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, we're not amateurs. We had a backup demo in case this all went to hell. I'm going to skip the video. It's exactly what you've seen right now. It just is slightly more pre-recorded and pre-prepared. So click through that.
So, on top of the endpoint that gives you the password completely for free, they had some other ones. One of them was a basic list locks owned by a user, where it takes a user ID as an argument, which, of course, was a sequential number going up and very easily enumerated. From there, from grabbing that full list of locks, you could use the getUnlockLog endpoint, which returns the full log of any lock, given all of the times it's been unlocked. Now, incredibly, it includes a feature that records the location when it was unlocked. This means that for any lock, again, easily enumerable by user ID, you could grab the latitude and longitude, go out there and find it, and unlock it. So
that's back to me.
back to you.
I'll expand on that just a little bit. There were many API endpoints on there. We tried not to put too many of them in the slides because we would be here all day. But another fun thing that this application did, so there's a little bit of a saving grace with the location stuff in that by default it's disabled. So by default it will not record the locations of unlocks.
You can just turn it on though for any lock.
Yeah. So you know how nothing here requires authentication or authorization? Yeah, that doesn't require it either. So if you were absolutely insane, you could probably go through, enable it for a whole bunch of them, and then monitor them until you start seeing unlock locations, and then assuming that they're actually within reasonable distance to you, you've literally just got a beacon on a map of where you want to go to unlock a random padlock and grab whatever is behind it. I don't think anybody would actually do it, but it is very possible.
It's very easy.
Have we seen locks within reasonable distance of us? I couldn't possibly comment.
No, that would be irresponsible. We would never do anything like that.
So, let's summarize the issues. Obviously, there are the API vulnerabilities, and they are kind of the principal problem here. Everything else is not okay, but this is the least okay. The absolutely obvious one is the lack of authentication and authorization. You can get some fairly sensitive information out of it. You have the ability to change people's settings. You pretty much just get to control their system as if you were the owner of it. There were some other problems. They were very, very basic, and I will not go into them today. But suffice to say, if you're thinking of some, you probably got it right. We will then move on to the kind of middle-level issue of hard-coded encryption materials. So even if the API was all sorted out, there is still the potential of extracting a passcode from one of these unlock situations. Those, because the encryption material never changes, it's symmetric, it is hard-coded in the application, it is essentially ineffective, it is more an obfuscation method with extra steps. Because all it requires you to do is open up the app, look at it for a while. How long that while is depends on your luck, but you will find it, you will decrypt, it basically does nothing. And finally, and this is probably the least worst of the issues here, is the static passkeys. They are endlessly reusable. You've seen the passkeys when I was running the demo. We haven't hidden them from you. You now know how to unlock these 4 locks. I promise you we won't be putting them on anything sensitive. But you do. And you now know every single step of that. Without hitting the API, you could very easily unlock them. So that's not ideal. Ideally, they would either change periodically or the user would be able to change them, something along those lines. Because currently, if through some means you get these, the user has no recourse. They can't change their passkey. Their lock just becomes unlockable by somebody else. So what can we actually do in terms of mitigations? Each of these locks has a fingerprint-only mode. It's very difficult to get into. I've only managed to get into by accident. Then I've read the manual. Then I've read the manual again, and eventually I got a gist for it. So it's something like unpair them from the phone, then long press, then press 5 times with the same finger, and then it switches to fingerprint-only mode. You would lose some functionality because at that point they stop responding to the Bluetooth requests, but that's kind of what we want. So you end up with a lock that is still quite low security. I mean, look, those are flimsy. They can be smashed open with a hammer. They can be pulled open through every single technique you can imagine. But for a low security overpriced lock, at least you've got something as opposed to something that just pops open on request. An option that I think I prefer, at least for these ones, because they actually have keyways on them, I would probably take them apart and gut them and just get rid of the smart functionality. You will end up with a 50 quid crappy lock, but you at least have a lock that actually works. That's better than just throwing it out. Otherwise, put them in the bin. Anything else would require cooperation from the manufacturer, whom we've obviously tried to contact. I'll give you a moment to ponder. How do you think that went? Give me like a thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay. Am I seeing any thumbs up? I don't think I'm seeing any. Oh, I've got one from Dan. Perfect. Very ironic thumbs up. Well, here's how it actually went. So we started trying to communicate with them on the 1st of September. We wrote up an excessively long email explaining all the issues and how they can be exploited and how they could be fixed. Very unsurprisingly, that got us a big fat load of nothing, no response at all. We followed up a couple more times, tried to explain it a little bit more, but we were just getting completely blanked. We tried asking for a security contact, obviously completely blanked. We've tried emailing multiple points of contact within the company that seemed right. They claimed to have like a data protection enforcer. Obviously, that was getting no responses at all.
Didn't we even email their social media outreach manager?
We did email their social media outreach manager on the hope that they will at least be reading their emails. No, nothing.
Nope.
Then suddenly, around the 24th of October, something happened. My battery is running low. I'm not getting charged here. Excellent. Well, we'll just speedrun this. So, yeah, we got no response from the vendor. But the API and app suddenly received an update, and things started changing a little bit. And we were thinking, ooh, maybe they are listening. Because what happened essentially is, in these requests that I've showed you, they weren't expecting any authentication or authorization. There was a brief moment in time when they were taking authentication, but no authorization. So what that means is you had to log in. It's just that you could log in as anybody and still get full access. So it wasn't really doing anything, but it was trying to do something. It seemed like there is some amount of effort going in there. So our thought was, oh, maybe they actually are reading our emails and just not responding for them. Maybe they think that we're looking for money, or maybe there's some cultural barrier. We don't know. We are communicating with a company that is entirely based in China. There might be something we don't understand as to why they don't get back to us. But that was optimistic. We've adjusted our POC a little bit to make sure it actually logs in. And then at some point when we were retesting everything, we realized that they've undone it all a month later. So we're back to no authentication, no authorization. There was like 2 weeks during which they were doing it. Current working hypothesis is that probably broke something in the app and they were just undo it, it's fine.
Casually disabled authentication.
Yeah, it
wasn't worth running, it's too much effort.
Realistically, we don't know what happened there. It was just interesting that it did. And it does give me some hope that maybe there is someone out there reading those emails and just, for whatever reason doesn't respond. So we will continue to try and communicate with them, but at the same time, they have had forever and a day to try and do something about this, and they haven't. So we're going public. Blog post, this says it's been released. It absolutely hasn't. That'll be coming out in maybe a week or 2. It is basically written. It just needs a few tweaks. I think that's the standard excuse that everybody gives. But we're doing this talk, and we will keep trying to communicate with the vendor. And I'd like to use this as a slight opportunity. If you or anybody you know speaks Mandarin to a level where you could communicate these issues and perhaps help us bridge the cultural barrier, that is something we would very much like to try. Because we're thinking maybe that's it. Maybe the problem is that they're kind of, long emails coming from a weird guy in English. Maybe if they were in Chinese in a more approachable way, I don't know. But yeah, if you do, please get in touch. Which finally brings me to our conclusions, if my PowerPoint continues to work. There we go. Conclusion number 1. Don't buy this crap. Don't do what we did. Unless it's for fun. If you're going to buy them to play with them, if you're going to buy them to try and replicate this or to understand how these things work, then yes, by all means. But bloody hell, don't put them on anything sensitive. Thing is, with this vendor, maybe they will fix things eventually. Again, we are slightly hopeful. My laptop's just died. Give it a quick try.
You'll never know what the rest of the conclusions were.
No, I can keep talking about the conclusions. So, it's don't buy this crap. The other one is there is a little bit of hope that maybe eventually that specific vendor will fix them. But then there's a question of what about other vendors? Is that going to be any better? Probably not, is my guess. 2 seconds. So, there are other smart padlock vendors. There are plenty of other talks that try and go over the same type of issues, and they've basically had very similar findings. A lot of the time it is a completely unauthenticated API or very, very basic implementation flaws in the locks themselves. We're not optimistic that if you went for a different brand, you would be doing any better.
Even the big name ones like Masterlock or Abus, typically they probably are just using another cheap Chinese brand and then just slapping their own sticker on top of it.
Yeah, so I would say more expensive brands. I mean, maybe they're better. We haven't checked them, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Realistically, I don't think that these things will get better without standards and regulations. Currently, nobody tests these things. There are no requirements for any standards or for any assurance around the security of these products. So, yeah, why would you buy them? especially since it is not in anybody's interest in the kind of trifecta of people who make them and sell them to ensure that. This stuff sells fine just as it is. Why make it secure? Unless people stop buying it. And finally, and this is kind of my bigger message here, is you now actually have the tools to look into similar issues. We've talked about them at a high level. If you need more technical detail about any of the sides of this, please feel free to give us a shout. We will be more than happy to talk about it in more detail, either today at the conference or if you just pop us a message, that's completely fine.
Or read the blog that's definitely up.
Yeah, which will be up in a couple of weeks. And then we'll delay it again. But in general, I would say more scrutiny on this kind of stuff is always good. Again, these are shockingly bad. It would be good if people were actually playing with them, because then again, there is a little bit of benefit from them. The skill set is really not too hard to develop, but it is quite rare. People, for some reason, don't really go into reversing of these kind of processes or into reversing of mobile applications. Everybody kind of tends to focus on the big areas of offensive security, and they leave poor MobSec back in the dirt. I'm trying to encourage you here to actually give it a try. And yeah, go and hack some locks and other IoT devices. Go break stuff. It's fun. So, does anybody have any questions? Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I did try picking them. I have very limited experience with slider locks in particular. I might try and find someone who's running the lock picking village and force them to try picking it and tell me. I couldn't pick it. I don't have much experience with that type of lock, but I don't know.
I think another thing that's worth mentioning on that question is, for how crappy they are and for how weak they are, they have actually put in a decent effort into preventing at least the most obvious physical bypasses. So at least the bigger ones, the purple and black one that you've seen before, you can't shim them.
Yep. There's no core bypass where you stick something down the core and actuate the mechanism yourself. That doesn't exist in these. They've actually protected against it. A ball bearing locking mechanism which prevents shimming. Physically speaking, in terms of like brute force security, they are not great, but they're also not terrible. For the big ones at least, it's a 7mm unhardened steel shackle, which probably won't stand up against most bolt cutters, but it might be a deterrent. The body itself is, I actually don't know what it's made out of, but it's quite a thin casing. It is metal, but it's quite a thin casing and could probably be drilled or cut through quite easily, especially if it's gutted. So in general, I would never recommend these as actual physically secure locks under any circumstances, especially not for the price. But if you've got one, and it's better than throwing it away.
I think the other thing in terms of drilling specifically is there's a point roughly around here-ish that if you drill through, you'll get exactly to the point where the motor actuates the motorized unlock mechanism, and then you can literally just poke it with a stick and it'll open. Yeah. So if you're going destructive, that's probably the easiest way to do it, especially if you know where that point is, and I think I could probably eyeball it by now. However, if they're in their kind of full Bluetooth functionality, why would you go destructive? You can just ask it to open it, it will.
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else?
I will say I think that's all the time we have. Apologies for the late start and technical issues. But yeah, if everyone could give a big hand to Miłosz and Alex.